Okay, so this is going to be a just little wrap-up party almost to Madlax, just final thoughts. What do we walk away with since the ending was kind of an extreme laugh and there wasn't really a chance for us to just go like, okay, so here's our big final opinions and what this did contribute and didn't contribute. So here we are. And I suppose as a start, if we were just kind of going to this in a do I recommend this or not, I would probably put this in. Nah. I mean, I wouldn't like have this as your big, stupid, just guzzle down all of the episodes at once show because there is 26 and it does kind of drag. I think it's worth a look at the very least, especially if stuff like the Girls with Guns trilogy or just B Train in general is your jam. But it's admittedly a bit of a hard sell when you are just trying to frame it on its own merits.
As
Um,
somebody this is my first real exposure to B Train and their style of series, I can already see why there's a good bit of esteem and nostalgia for them, particularly in this period of time and anime, uh, especially what you can find stateside, but even kind of more broadly action series starring women were fairly uncommon, and they still sadly are fairly uncommon. And even when we did get them, they tended to be more fan service vehicles than anything very thoughtful or trying to be character driven. And Madlax, it's kind of a stretch to call it an action series, but I can definitely see why it was different enough at the time to catch people's attention and to keep it, because it did feature women who you describe as strong, in a plot that mostly focuses on them, and they were designed in ways that weren't overtly like fan servicey.
I guess that's kind of when I was trying to sit down and think about what my final thoughts were in regards to Madlax. I was actually thinking that the problems I really have with it are not too dissimilar to the problems that I have with its close counterpart Simone in kind of a big, stupid, female heavy action show that's really about politics and big issues like as existentialism, religious issues, what is right and wrong, but really not, and then just kind of blowing itself up at the very end and just saying screw it and having ultimately no point and nothing really to say. Because all of Madlax's flaws, I would say, are similar in that it just tried to do too much. It didn't really have a direction it was going to. It had way too many interesting things that it either just kind of forgot or thought were irrelevant. But as Ray was saying, I think kind of what brings me back to is that at the end of the day, it is not an exploitive show. Well, not exploitive in regards to its protagonists a lot, despite their being like always running around in cocktail dresses and everything else. And as Ray said, that's say what you want, but that's kind of not something that we see a lot these days, I think. For me.
Yeah, I might fight you a little bit on really comparing it to Simon too much. Um, I would say the big difference is that um, I would call Simon careless, whereas I would call Madlax confused.
Those are actually very good differential words, I would say. Madlax is definitely very confused. I feel like it is just kind of a bit more well intentioned in what it was trying to do, but also just kind of not really getting a as big a bite out of all the things here. Like, am I the only one who's just disappointed that like the weird Eldritch Lord ultimately kind of didn't go anywhere? Like,
If I had to really laser in on one particular thing to criticize about Madlax, it would be its lack of focus. Madlax is really like four series all competing to be the main plot. You have, you know, Gaza Sonica and its civil war. You have Vanessa and her trying to uncover the truth. You have the supernatural with um, the books, and then you have this sort of metaphorical character study in Margaret, and none of those plots they intersect occasionally, but they all just continue to go on their separate ways, and they never mingle long enough for them it to become meaningful. So what that combines into it to create this really bad pacing problem, because you have episodes upon episodes consecutively that are dedicated to these individual plot threads that don't end up that don't end up coalescing into a singular plot, and it creates a confusion on what the series is even about, where it ends on this Margaret character study thing, where the metaphorical splitting of personalities to cope with trauma and stuff like that, which kind of, because it's the end of the series, that makes you want to think that's what the series was supposed to be about in the first place, but none of the rest of the series prior to those last four or so episodes are about that.
And jumping off of character study, I think another thing that really could have saved this show is one of the things that Ray just said when we were reviewing this. I think it was a couple episodes before the last one, is spiritless. And I think that is another problem because ultimately the merits of Madlax come down to its cast, both in its protagonists, in its sub protagonists like Vanessa, and the sniper lady, and the maid. And for all intents and purposes, they really are kind of the central points of it. Because ultimately, the things like the plot books and Gar's Sonica and all of the Civil War that goes nowhere is really, I would say, the intention was to cater to their stories, and I can definitely appreciate it, but there really just wasn't a lot of bite to the characters. And I'm not saying that's a flaw in any of their creations. Like, for all intents and purposes, everything that really set out with all of them should have really worked and should have worked together, but there was just kind of this odd lethargy that all of them sort of had that didn't really kind of give them a chance to really be exposed to stress or didn't really have them a way to act in any sort of meaningful way in their respective environments. I think a lot of this is because this was trying to be kind of more of a philosophically dreamy thing, but I think like it really did kind of come at a horrible cost to the show because a lot of just the personalities of this characters could have really solved it, especially since it did ultimately have a flamboyant gun antiky side to it and was trying to be something superseding an ultra serious series, but it just didn't get off the ground, and I think that is just something that I am kind of the most disappointed with when I go back to it.
On
Especially, go right ahead.
with As far as characters are concerned, I think probably the biggest crime, if I could call it that, that Madlax commits is Vanessa, in that her character is rendered meaningless by the 2/3 to 3/4 mark, because she goes on her quest to blow the lid off the whole Civil War thing,
Hmm.
and the series stops being about that. That stops
Yeah.
mattering, and her sacrifice, all of the she sacrificed and all the danger she put herself in as a result, stops mattering. If I had to pick the two best characters of the series, I would say it would be the sniper and Vanessa, for two big reasons. One, they were the most passionate characters.
Mm.
They had the most, both like in terms of just the structure of the character and the way they're written, and also in the acting behind the characters.
Mm.
um, I complained about this in the main commentaries. The voice acting is, it's not bad, but it's not like incompetently bad, but it's spiritless and passionless the way the characters are acted. They all sound like they're strung out on sleeping medications, and I don't know if that was deliberate or not. I'm not familiar with the casts of Madlax off the top of my head and what else they've done, and whether or not this is par for the course for them. But Vanessa and the sniper really stuck out for the amount of emotion that they displayed,
Mm.
both in their motivations and in their actual acting. And it really sucks that Vanessa got so little play and ended up mattering so little. And she and the sniper lady should have been combined into the same character.
I could see that, and I honestly think that would have been a strength. Like, Though another thing that I will leave on one last note is I think this is another series that really did suffer for kind of the vaguest villain I've seen in a while. Just there are big stupid world destroy reasons. There are big stupid overpowered villains. And there are villains that just do something for no reason whatsoever. All three of those things should not be combined under any circumstances because Calendar Boy just what what was he even for? Like
That
if
yeah, the
mhm,
villain Calendar Man is the only thing that I will straight up with conviction say was bad in Madlax. Like that
mhm.
is unconscionable the way that character was handled. It took so long for him to be established as the actual main villain, and we never really until like the last two episodes or so understand what or why he's trying to do, and his reasoning makes no sense.
And it's just ultimately a waste of time considering all of these way more interesting conflicts with the Civil War, with the books, with Vanessa, with all of these interpersonal character relationships, and even the stupid freaking amnesia overlay could have all pandered out into something good, but instead it did just veer into this dude who just wanted to wreck the world for the canon reason of cuz.
Just because he could. That's he. I guess he was babbling on about the true nature of man and hate and whatever, but like it's so inconsistent and so such nonsense that he might as well just have been giggling like a maniac. That would have been just as coherent and compelling.
And not to mention, I've brought this up, but like, why would he care? He doesn't really seem to have any beef with humanity, as far as I can tell. He doesn't really kind of care enough about people to A, hate them, or B, want to bring out their true natures. He's just sitting at his computer on his disco ball and just laughing and spawning his infinite army of soldiers, which
Because
was the best scene at the end, but.
but like yeah, he it's not like he's doing it for revenge. When he's introduced in the past, he's still trying to do the same thing. He was just stopped.
So yeah, it's like, why? Why do I even care? Why is this the sudden Why is this the reason for all of this chaos and turmoil that this world has established? It's dumb. It's not rewarding.
So I guess there's the debate. There's the debate going that goes around occasionally about what's worse when it comes to something is it wasted potential or no potential? Is something worse when it could never have been good in the first place, or is it worse whenever it squanders what it could have been?
That is a good one, and I'm honestly not sure which I should put Madlax into.
I err on the side of wasted potential. I think Madlax could have been something special. I can see all the threads of like I when I outlined all the plots, or at
Mm.
least all the plots I saw, the thing that frustrates me is that any one of them could have carried the show had they decided to focus on it.
Mm-hmm. And instead, they chose something completely different and something terrible to focus the show on, ultimately. Like, this is not the runway we wanted to bring this thing on the ground with. And
So
I think that's a pretty good sum up of our feelings.
yeah, if you were to ask me whether or not I liked it or not, I'd say it was all right. Like we tend to be intensely negative at times about it. Part of that is to fill time. We need things to talk about whenever we're covering like 18 hours of footage.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is just our personal styles. We tend to just be fairly aggressive in our criticisms about things, even on things that we like.
But ultimately, the fact that we have a lot to talk about with this is already kind of more of a better ish sign than not, because admittedly, this show didn't put us to sleep at the end of the day. It had interest, which for a mass series is still kind of a point in its favor, I would say.
If I had to give it an arbitrary number on a random scale, I would say it was probably like a 6 on 10.
I would say, yeah, I'd say more 5.5 in my personal thing, but that's fair enough. It gets the job done. There are a lot worse ways to spend a 26 episode series.
If it's something that you haven't watched, you take it or leave it. If it's something that you already watched and like, probably keep it that way and don't go back to it.
And if you're wanting to have a sequel to Noir, I would say just skip to Cazador El Bruja. You'll be more satisfied at the end of the day.
Though, like at the end of the day, I will probably end up finally watching more B Train because if nothing else, I'm intrigued now. I've I've had my eye on B Train for a while. Several people have said that I should check him out, and I just haven't. This is my first time, so I have a taste of seeing what could potentially be something. They could be a good series studio, and I want to see what their output is like.
All right, I'm honestly kind of interested in going back to them myself. Even just I'm more interested in Noir now that I have a bit more of an adult appreciation of the weirdo second child and their great trilogy.
All right, um, that's Madlax. It was all
And
right.
that's our final thoughts. Thank you so much for listening to this. We're really excited to do the next series with you guys. We've got a really nice house favorite lined up for you.
All right, see you then.
Mhm.